Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Well, I was prepared for the movement of spirit, but not for the breaking of a stand there. It looks like Vernon's okay, though. You see, even though, this beautiful example, even though we set the tone, we set the space, here we are ready to come together this morning in consciousness, to come together to raise our awareness of the indwelling Christ presence. Human stuff still happens. Have you ever noticed that in your own life? You set an intention. Oh, I feel so blissful. I love everyone. The birds are singing. This is happening. And then something unexpected happens. Is it the unexpected thing that is the problem? Is that unexpected thing an obstacle to the realization of oneness? Or is it an invitation into the awareness that the wholeness of God is happening all the time in and through every single circumstances, whether in our human minds we decide to call it good or bad or sometimes ugly. So today we are talking about dissolving the wall. This is our fourth unity principle that I'll be talking about today. Reverend Michaels covered our first three principles earlier this month. We're running out of January already. I can't believe it. Here we are in a new year. He talks about the first two principles. God is everywhere present, good. And the second principle, I am. If God is everywhere present and nothing is outside the circle of God, nothing is outside the wholeness and the perfection of God, then I must be included. God didn't make an exception for me. Everybody's the expression of God except that one over there. And then principle 3, that we get to co-create our experiences. We get to shape our experiences by the way we hold them in thought, what thoughts we are nurturing, what thoughts we are holding, what beliefs we are living our lives from, that helps create the way we experience life itself. So then principle 4 then becomes the practices that we use to remind us, because those principles, those first three, I can remember when I first came to Unity and heard these principles. I had never heard anything like this in my life. And I thought, well, this is it then. Found it. Found the truth. I'm done. I'm good. But yet, human things still happen. Things still happen in my life that caused me to place more attention on what's going on out here than what's going on in here. Because these truths are meant to be lived in here. We're talking about in the meditation, we are an inlet to all that God is flowing through us. And that when we focus on that, then we may become, this part's our choice, we may become an outlet for it. We may become an outlet when we consciously choose to align ourselves with the realization of the wholeness of God expressing itself as us. So I'm so excited to talk about prayer. I'm going to focus on prayer today, and we're going to talk a little bit about meditation as tools that we use to help us stay in alignment with the truth that we have already realized is present, that we've already realized at a deep level, to bring us back to that realization. And I have to admit something about prayer. I've had a different kind of relationship with prayer at different times in my life. I didn't grow up in a religious household, so I wasn't exactly sure what to do with prayer, where to park it in my life. And then I found Unity, and Unity has a particular way of teaching prayer, an affirmative way where we claim and we know the truth and we speak the truth, rather than come as a person with guilt and with shame and asking to be redeemed. We come already whole and claim that wholeness. And there's something very beautiful and powerful in that mode of prayer. And I'll be teaching a prayer class in March if any of you would like to know it. And here, what I am here today to tell you, though, is guess what? You don't need to know it. You don't need to know it to experience it. I invite you to know it. But you don't need to know any particular modality or method or framework to have an experience of God. How could you? You are already God essence. Everything you need to know to experience it has been already given to you when you were born. Sig Paulson, one of our former Unity ministers here, said, prayer is as easy as breathing. When you notice your breath, when you notice the source of your being, when you place awareness onto that, honey, that's a prayer. When you realize that everything that has ever occurred in your life has brought you to this moment so you can be right here, right now, just as you are. And you find yourself in an experience of gratitude. I couldn't have orchestrated all this. Honey, that's a prayer. When you look at a tree or a flower or a newborn baby, and your mind cannot create the words to describe the oneness, the connection, the aliveness you feel, all words drop away, and you just behold the beauty. That's a prayer. And so, in reality, though, how can we use prayer as a tool? Not for just those moments that we get kind of smacked aside in awe and wonder, not as a Hail Mary when we've tried everything else. I'm like, well, I might ask for some help here. 911, we don't have to wait to that moment. How can we use it? And I can tell you that there's something interesting that happens with prayer, that we may feel very comfortable in an interior way, or maybe we don't. Maybe we're in a desolate space with prayer. We're not exactly sure how to communicate with the God of our being. But when it's interior, at least we know. It's kind of private. And then when we're asked to maybe pray for another, or to put words and speak them out loud, sometimes it can come a little scary, perhaps, a little intimidating. We might focus on trying to get the exact words right. And just so you know that this is not something that just happens to lay people, let me tell you about my experience in ministerial school. And you're in ministerial school, you are with people who have decided this is going to be their vocation, that they are being called to pray for other people, to support them in their spiritual unfoldment. You would think at the beginning of every class when the teacher says, who would like to pray us in? You'd get everybody jumping up and down. I see Debbie Mack shaking her head no, because she knows. What you have, in my experience in the 40-some-odd classes I took, crickets. So much so that I had this beloved teacher who knew this. And at the beginning of his class, all my classes were on Zoom. He had an application, a software application, that created like a wheel of fortune, except he called it prayer roulette. And he put one of our names on each little thing, and he'd spin that thing, honey, and when it would land on your name, you knew it was you. And I can remember my palms sweating, and I can remember getting anxious about, I need to say and deliver the right and perfect thing. And so what did I do? Before every class I took, I began to write a prayer. What if I get prayer roulette this time? And then I would write it and sit with it for 10, 15 minutes before the class, so I got it deep down in me, so that I wouldn't have to read it off the paper. Nobody, oh, she's just coming up with this off the top. No, I was not. I was in it, honey. I was marinating in it. I was immersing in it. And what began to happen over time is I became comfortable. I became not needing to attach to the particular words, but the feeling, the experience, the openness of recognizing my oneness with the source of all life. So that's open and available to each and every one of us as prayer, whether we know the words to say or we don't. So today I'd like to explore the idea of why do we need prayer? Is this still a relevant thing in 2026? Our thoughts and prayers are with you. What does that mean? What is the offering of prayer? And why do we need it in our own lives? And why is it an offering for the entire world when we do our work? So I call today's talk Dissolving the Wall. Because in my experience, that is the entire point of spiritual practice, is in our human experience, we have placed an invisible wall in different areas of our life, between ourselves and the divine, between ourselves and other people, between ourselves and circumstances we'd rather not look at. And prayer is about dissolving those walls, dismantling them, allowing them to be revealed for the powerlessness that they have, revealing the power of the divine within us. My friend Thomas Merton, he doesn't know we're friends. I mean, unless he does on some level, because he died in the 1960s. But I feel like we're friends. I would be fangirling if he was here today. But at the end of his autobiography, it was called The Seven-Story Mountain. This was his story of how he ended up finding his own spirituality and becoming a monk. He has a very vulnerable and raw prayer at the end of that book. And he talks about this idea of he no longer even wants to sit with the idea that God has a will and he has to do it. He said, because in that idea, I surrender, just like Julia beautifully sung, how do I want to live my life? I want to surrender to this higher intelligence, to this higher love, to this higher consciousness that is in me. But in doing so, Thomas Merton said, I no longer want to say that this is something outside of me, wanting me to be a certain way or some kind of standards to live up to, because anytime I do that, I create a gap and a distance between me and God. And then he said, and it is that distance which kills me. It's a lighthearted way to look at prayer, isn't it? But there's some truth in that. The distance that we place between ourselves and the divine, however we hold it, has power to deaden our experience of life, has power to kill our spirit. Okay, but then the opposite is also true. We're only one thought, one conscious realization, one conscious breath even from the realization that there is no distance between us and the divine, that any distance that we perceive is something we've placed, is a wall we've built. And honey, if we've built it, we can dismantle it. Okay? So we can do that right here, right now. So first of all, one of the things we may want to look at in our prayer experience is that we've all evolved, right? If you think about the person you were 10 years ago, you've changed, right? You don't believe all of the same things you believed 10 years ago. You're different. You're maybe more mature. Sometimes I question my own maturity, but that's okay. That's a different subject. But we're constantly evolving. Myrtle Fillmore says we're constantly unfolding the many departments of God mind as our life. So we're constantly evolving, but sometimes maybe parts of our lives don't come along with the rest of it. And so we want to look at how we're holding this idea of prayer. And so many of us were taught when we were children, even though I didn't grow up in a religious home, I was taught the prayer that I'm sure many of you know, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And even as a young child, I thought, oh gosh, I got to do this every night? I didn't even know I was in danger. And now I got to say this every night. And so I decided, okay, maybe I was already a little lazy at that time. I wanted a shortcut. I added at the end, I pray the Lord my soul to take, and just keep it, please. Because I don't want to have to do this every single night. Or if I forget a night, just keep it. I can't be doing this every night. So as we grow up, many of us probably are, I'm guessing there's not many people that say that prayer anymore, right? But there is still something sometimes in our way of holding what we're asking for, that this is a materiality. Michael talked about this last week too, is a change in condition. We may pray to the God that likes the same sports teams that we like. We may pray to the God of new cars, pray to the God of many, many things, of taking tests, new jobs, all of these things. And there's only ever one thing happening. And what we're really wanting to happen is to realize that here, now, despite all conditions, the wholeness of God is revealing itself. That we can align ourselves with that consciousness whereby no condition can diminish our experience of that. And so sometimes, though, we need to look at how we're holding, where our distance is, what walls do we have up. One of the things when we were raising our kids and we moved to Singapore, I've shared this before, when my oldest son was about 10 years old, And so Singapore has a wide variety of food, and as long as you're eating all kinds of different Asian foods, oh, it's inexpensive, it's prolific, it's wonderful. But the Western food, when we got a hankering to eat something American once in a while, is a little more expensive. It's actually quite pricey. But every once in a while, the kids just needed to go to Hard Rock Cafe. And Chris and I would kind of roll our eyes, and we'd take them. And our son was 10 years old, and he would tell us, Mom, Dad, I really don't want to eat off the kids' menu anymore. And I'd look at the menu and I'd be like, oh gosh, what's he going to order if he doesn't order off this kids' menu? No, honey, just eat off the kids' menu. You're fine. You'll get enough. You can get a snack when you get home. And finally, one day we're at Hard Rock Cafe and he looks at the kids' menu. They hand him one with the crayons and he looks at us and says, I am not eating off of the Little Rocker menu ever again. He said, okay, you got it. Order whatever you want. And in some ways, we can compare that to we're ordering off the kids' menu of life, honey. The things that we're asking for or seeking to experience in our life, we are limiting ourselves. What's good about the kids' menu? It's comforting. You can count on the same things. You go to a Thai restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, an Indian restaurant, they're going to have chicken tendies, mac and cheese, some hot dog. They're going to have the same thing everywhere you go. But you're going to get the same experience everywhere you go. You're not going to get the full richness of the entire menu. The other thing about the kids' menu is cost effective, isn't it? Doesn't cost you much. When you order off that adult menu, more is required from you. And so it is with prayer as well. When you have an adult prayer, not to judge the other prayers, but you have an adult, mature prayer that comes from that place of realization of the wholeness of God is always present, and you realize, hey, if there's any walls here, it is in my consciousness that they have been constructed, and I can also deconstruct them. Something is required of you. A change is required of you. We don't go to prayer to ask God to change things. We go to prayer to ask to be changed. Not improved, not to not be guilty of sin or, of the things that we're ashamed about. As a matter of fact, to ask to see all of those things differently, to see them the way that the divine sees it, which is just an expression of itself unfolding, an expression of itself. Oh, this, more of this, bump up a limitation, okay. We can set that aside. Where am I stuck? Where am I feeling some constriction? If I'm feeling some constriction, it's because I've placed the constriction there. So we can let it go. You know, the Apostle Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians. He says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I reasoned as a child. I thought like a child, but now I've grown. So I invite you to consider how you hold the idea of prayer. I was in a conversation with our beloved Maggie Cole a couple of weeks ago, and she shared with me a time where she was in an experience of a class. Somebody said, what are you not praying for? You hear how it got still in here? What are you not praying for? What have you put on the menu that you're not allowed to access? Where is there a place in your life, in your experience that you think, not there? It's always been like that. That's just the way things have always been for me. There's an invitation into a greater realization that even in that, or maybe even especially in that, the love of the divine is seeking to reveal itself in, through, as you, with your cooperation, with your willingness, with your acceptance. And we want it sometimes, I think as humans, sometimes we want it to be harder. Oh, that sounds too easy. All I have to do is accept it and allow it. All I have to do is this. It's a little bit more difficult than that, isn't it? It's a little bit more difficult than that because there are countless things that say, wait, this is all way more important than any of that stuff. This is all way more important than sitting in the stillness. This is way more urgent than allowing yourself to just be. How can you allow yourself to just be when there are so many things to be done? But honey, as Joanne talked about in class this morning, when you allow yourself to just be, something opens up. Something frees up. A liberation occurs for you to move from that beingness and then create an activity that is informed and empowered by the realization that you are one with all life. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. And so when Jesus was in his teaching ministry, there were a couple of times where he went away to pray. There were times that he prayed in solitude, and then there were times that he prayed within a group. There were times that his disciples said, teach us how to pray. Give us a prayer so that we can have words to know what you know, so that we can talk to the divine the way that you speak to the divine. So he shared the Lord's Prayer, and he shared it twice. Once in the Gospel of Matthew as a way of saying, hey, you don't have to brag about it. You don't have to get up and stand in front of everybody and say the fanciest words, have the best phrases, be the most spiritual. Go and say these things. And in the Gospel of Luke, his disciples said, Master, teach us how to pray. And the Lord's Prayer is an affirmative prayer. It is affirmative prayer, and when in the way that there is a realization, God's present here, now. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. It's here, it's now. And then there's a claim. Well, if God is all there is, and there is a claim, thy will be done, give us this day our daily bread. It's here, it's now. For today, what do we need? This is a way to move our consciousness from what might I need 6 weeks from now? What might I need if this person says this or does this? How will I react if this happens? It's all happening here. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of coming across a book called Prayers of the Cosmos. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this. I see some heads nodding. Neil Douglas Klotz is the one that put this together. And what he sought to do, he was kind of piggybacking on the work of George Lomson and some others that studied Aramaic, which is the language we most likely think Jesus spoke at the time of his ministry. And in Aramaic, it's slightly different very different actually than our English language. Words have many layers. They have multiple meanings. Some of our words do that as well. But then they mean something different when they're all clustered together. They can take on a whole new meaning. And the book Prayers of the Cosmos is beautiful. He shares a possible interpretation of what the Lord's Prayer might have been in Aramaic in Jesus' time. And I'm going to share it with you in just a moment. He also shares the Beatitudes in a way that frees them, gives them expansion. So I invite you to check that out. But for the time being, I'd like to invite you into an experience of this Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. So if it feels good for you, you can close down your eyes. You don't have to. Only if it feels right. Just simply breathe. And imagine in this moment that we are engaging in the act of collective prayer, uniting our consciousness to know and to claim that the presence and the wholeness and the revelation of the divine is happening here now. And the Lord's Prayer is this: O birther, father, and mother of the cosmos, focus your light within us, make it useful. Create your reign of unity now. Your one desire then acts with ours. As in all light, so in all forms. Grant each day what we need in both bread and insight. Loose the cords that bind us through our mistakes as we release the strands of guilt we hold of others. Do not let surface things delude us, but free us from what holds us back. Your will is the one ruling will. From age to age it renews, the song that beautifies all. Truly, power to these statements. Let all of my actions grow from the ground on which they're spoken. Amen. Create your reign of unity now. Right here, right now. You can open your eyes if you'd like. Create your reign of unity right here, right now. Through us is being created. Each day is provided the insight and the bread. Spirit is providing what we need for our physical sustenance, as well as what we need in terms of insight, wisdom, intuition, all of that coming from the wellspring, from the fountainhead of source. The song that beautifies all of us, one. There's one light that we are all expressions of. Prayer can remind us of this. Prayer can bring us back home to this. And when we do this for ourselves, when we realize there's one light that unifies all, that the reign of unity is the purpose behind this whole thing, so that we realize our oneness with one another and we act from that place, then we become more. We become more than we could ever expect, not in a way that to add something onto ourselves, but we simply reveal more of who we already were. And so we speak prayers in the affirmative that they are happening here and now. Not as some aspirational thing, but here. And yet, sometimes we notice the vision that we hold for wholeness, the vision that we hold for harmony, the vision that we hold for love is not being outpictured quite yet. Is not obvious when we look at the forms that are taking place in our world and in our lives. So we can hold to a vision and still hold to right now what is mine to do. Right now, mine is to bring my consciousness into the awareness that the realization of God is happening within me by direct experience. So tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day, which we have come to celebrate as National Service Day. His birthday was on January 15th. And I don't need to tell you what a brilliant man he was, what a brilliant being. But the thing is that he talked about, when he said he had a dream, when he had this idea, it was an aspirational dream, yet not fully yet realized then, not fully yet realized now, and yet vitally important to know and to claim that this is what's possible to be experienced. This is what's possible to be experienced when we know ourselves for who we are, and when I know and look at every one of you for who you are, which is nothing less than an expression of the divine. And so even though it was not TBD, to be determined, it's TBE, to be experienced. It hasn't fully yet been experienced or fully lived out in this world, but that does not mean that there's not work to do right here and right now. One of the things that he talked about in his letter from Birmingham City Jail, he said that he had been accused of being an extremist through his nonviolent action, that some people were encouraging him, slow down, slow down. And he said at first he was like, an extremist? All I am doing is supporting people in nonviolent protests and protesting against something that is unhealthy, something that is unnatural. I am having people do this together in creative community. How is that an extremist? And then he said, wait a minute. Was Jesus not an extremist in love? When he said, bless your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, love those who revile you. He said, if that's the kind of extremist they're calling me, that's the kind of extremist I want to be, an extremist in love. And so I believe today that's what we're being called to do, is to be an extremist of that love in our own lives, but not just for ourselves, in all of our relationships, in our communities. We talked about in class this morning, Emily Cady said, whenever one member of a family spends time in the presence of God, comes home to that realization of oneness with the divine, that disharmony cannot survive in a household where even one person is present. So if disharmony cannot survive in one household that we're present, the presence of God is realized, then not one community, not one relationship, disharmony cannot survive if we commit to knowing the presence of God within us. Yeah? Thank you all. At this time, I'd like to invite the one and only Ken Gale out. But as I pray at the close of the service, I invite you to prayer one more time. Right here, right now, what I know and affirm is that we in this room, gathered here today, all of our friends online, we have the power to dissolve all walls. We have the power to dissolve any walls that we have placed within ourselves, walls separating ourselves from the consciousness of God, the wholeness of God. Any place that we're holding any part of our lives separate from the revelation of love. Any place in our relationships that feels like they have been ruptured or disrupted, disconnected, we dissolve those walls of disconnection right here, right now. In our community, in our city of Houston, we dissolve all walls. We see our brothers and sisters, all of our human siblings, all of our animal companions all around the world. There are no walls. We are simply one organism making itself, that's expressing itself uniquely. We dissolve all walls all over the globe, all over this planet, any walls that we have put up between us and another nation, another person. We take down those walls right here, right now. We allow them to be dismantled. We allow them to fade into the nothingness from which they came. And in doing so, what arises is the consciousness of oneness. What arises is the consciousness of love that we were here to express. And I say thank you, God, for every single person who is engaged in this work of revealing the divine whole. And so it is. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.